Hi there. By way of introduction, my name's Michaela. I currently live in Kokomo, Indiana. I grew up in the Metro Detroit area in Michigan, and I have 3 kids, and I co-pastor Mount Zion Free Methodist Church with my husband, Jackson. What's interesting about James A.K. Smith's book is I've actually been very shaped by this text before ever reading it. My husband went to Asbury Theological Seminary, and read this text in that community. Our church was also really shaped by this book. They used it in all of their Intro to Worship Design committee groups that they did. We had a Robert Weber PhD guy as one of our pastors, and so for the last probably 5 to 6 years, the ethos of this text has permeated all that we have done in Asbury and all that we are doing at our church, Mount Zion. And I point this way because my church is right there across the parking lot, right out the window. The main thesis that Dr. Smith is pointing out in this book is that we are far more than thinking machines, brains on a stick, that we as human beings are propelled by our loves. And in order for our loves to match God, we need to worship, and worship well. This seems to be a question that pastors, we ask a lot, right? Like, how do we get people to change? Why aren't people changing in our church, and they're stiff-necked people or whatever? And in order for Smith to answer that question of why our stiff-necked people aren't changing, or maybe why we as pastors aren't changing, is because, we first need to understand what human beings are. And like I said, we are not brains on a stick. We are lovers. We are heart-propelled people. We are driven by our loves. We're not just driven by our loves, and that's the end of the story. Our loves drive us toward something, toward a telos, toward an idea or an imagining of the good life. And for many of us, our loves and our idea of the good life are subconscious. They are beyond words. We cannot explore them readily. In fact, it's a work of the Spirit for those kind of things to be revealed. If we don't really examine before God our loves and our telos, where we're being propelled toward, we can find we really don't want what we think we want, and we're often probably doing things that we don't want to do. It's that head-heart gap that many of us feel, and Smith explores too. An example of this happened in the last few weeks in our church. I have the opportunity of pastoring 2 different men. Great guys, love Jesus, outspoken, wonderful, and they're 2 different political parties, moderate in those parties, but in different narratives, all this still. And in this kind of Delta variant wave, they have 2 really different responses. One guy thinks everyone should be cautious and get vaccinated in the booster and wear the masks and all of the things, no groups, like every precaution we must take. That's his stance. And another guy would say, no, I don't think that we need all those precautions. We need to live our lives. There's emotional and social dynamics at play here. No. Both love Jesus, and both cannot understand each other. And in the words of Smith, it's because their telos, as I've explored with them last month, are very different from each other. For the guy who doesn't want to take precautions, his idea of the good life, as he has told me, is to get on the back of his motorcycle and to explore, to be with people face to face. He has a lot of anxiety and depression, so for him to be isolated causes incredible emotional and mental imbalances. And so the good life for him is being with people, getting on his motorcycle, playing in a band. Like, that is his life. And if he has to live 10 years less, but he can do all that, he's happy. He'd rather not live long and not be able to do those things. On the other hand, the man who wants to take all the precautions is such a family man. He has grandkids and great-grandkids all on the same street. They see each other multiple times during the week. They just want to be in each other's homes and eat dinner together, and this is the good life for him. Both are beautiful. But for this guy over here, he wants to live long. He wants as many Sunday afternoon dinners as he possibly can get. That's his telos. Life full of experience and adventure is this telos, and thus their response to something like COVID conflict with each other. It wasn't until we had that conversation that our actions actually made a lot more sense. They both have two very different ideas of the good life. Everything else on paper looked very similar. Same age, white, Hoosiers, worked similar jobs in similar places, retired. You'd think they were the same in many ways, but their idea of good was very different. So exploring those, especially in community or as pastors, can be really helpful. What do our people really want? And is that image of what they want changing how they're acting in our community spaces? So, interestingly, Smith doesn't stop there. He says that we have these subconscious images and loves that are formed by something. They are the rituals and liturgies of our daily lives, our habits. He talks a lot about vices and virtues, but for the sake of summary, I think it's really important, kind of the two consequential points here. One is that our liturgies and our rituals are also very subconscious to us. We don't even realize we're participating in them. For me, that looks a lot like using my cell phone, how social media affects my brain and how I perceive my own life and how I perceive God. When I have prayer during the day, all of those things are liturgies, and they affect my loves and the telos that I am moving toward. Our secular liturgies can, and I would maybe disagree a little with James Smith on how much they can distract us from God. I think there's good ones too. But our secular liturgies can really move us away from the heart and the kingdom. And so for him, worship is the main way that we can reorient and recalibrate our loves, and making sure every week and regularly, even throughout our days, that we are oriented toward a biblical understanding of the kingdom. As pastors, that means our worship spaces are so important. What are we pointing to? What is the language we're using? Are we gathering? Are we listening? Are we communing with God? And are we being sent out into the world? The word and table dynamic. All of those are so important to fully be transformed into the image and likeness of Jesus. One of the examples in the end that has been really formative for me is receiving communion every Sunday. That's been part of my liturgy for the past 6 years, and it has changed me at a depth of myself that I don't have words for, but has been very formative for me. And again, that was inspired by this text, but I'm eager to keep reading.